everybody. Welcome to the SBP Podcast, the voice of mobile film. I'm your host, Susie Botello, and this is episode 41. Before I go anywhere from here, I'm going to share a few updates about the state of affairs here at SBP. First, the International Mobile Film Festival submissions for feature-length mobile films has closed for 2019. We got some really impressive films, and so we're already notifying the filmmakers about their films. So if you haven't received an email from us, go ahead and contact us and send us an email, and we'll share where your film is in the process. Second, the short film competition is still open, but that's actually going to close next month on November 19th. So get your films in by then, 1 to 5 minutes. Did I just read your mind? Obviously, all films must be shot with mobile phones, so check out all the details on our website on the rules page. Where can you find that? Well, here's the address to our website. It's www.internationalmobilefilmfestival.com. We don't expect you to pull over if you're doing that now. We always put the link and share that in our notes. Okay, so this Thursday, October 25th in San Diego, our International Mobile Film Festival is presenting, we're hosting another Connect and Meetup event for mobilized stories on mobile filmmaking. So we were just there literally today. We were checking the video and the sound, and it's going to be awesome. So some of the community members who came to our first event last month are going to present a mobile film, and everyone will have a jab at critiquing those films. No time for being sensitive. We will also be discussing mobile filmmaking, the festival, great opportunities, and we'll be sharing some tricks and tips and a treat with our raffle. Oh yeah, and speaking of tricks and treats, how do you like our segue here? Our Mobilize Stories contest. This is the one that's open to basically the entire planet. Is actually going to expire. It's called, let me see, what did we call that? We called it the Scary Freaky Stories Smartphone Video Contest. It's kind of a long one. The reason we called it that is because, it's October. We have Halloween, and this contest ends, it just so happens to be, guys, it ends on October 31st at midnight. So if you survive Halloween, then submit your film. So you basically even have Halloween Eve to make your film. Now, you can get the details to our October 25th at 7:30 p.m. San Diego event. And you can get all the details about submitting your film to the contest at www.mobilizestories.com. Our guest today made me feel a bit nostalgic, and you're going to listen to him right now. He kind of made me miss the good old days. I'm talking about the good old days back when we were just getting started with our film festival, the Mobile Film School, back in the beginning, because my guest is one of the pioneers in mobile film whom I met back in 2011. Now, back then, he was living in New Zealand, but now he is in Melbourne in Australia. And I have to tell you, I don't know of many others who created platforms like we did back then and have continuously held a live event, mobile film festival ever since, every single year without fail. I could be wrong, but I just can't think of anyone. So, my guest is very much into experimental storytelling when it comes to mobile film and video, and he's an explorer in the industry. I think you're going to enjoy meeting my good friend, a blast from the past, as they say, Max Schleser. So let's go talk to him now. Hey, Max, welcome to the show. How are you?
Yeah, good day. I'm well, thank you.
Hey, listeners, Max is right now, you're in Melbourne, right? In Australia?
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
it's really nice to talk with Max. Max and I were, actually, Max is a greater pioneer than myself. I met Max, I think it was 2010, 2011. And Max was living in New Zealand at the time, working there.
Yep.
Massey University, right, in Wellington?
Yep, that's right.
And you had the Mobile Innovation Network
Aotearoa.
there you go. That was in Auckland, though, right?
No, it was Aotearoa is a Maori name for New Zealand, and so when I moved to New Zealand, I started to continue the work that I did. So I'm actually from Germany, but then I lived for 10 years in London. After 10 years in London, I moved for 7 years to New Zealand. And in London was really the time when I first got into smartphone or mobile phone filmmaking at that time. And I just looked on my YouTube channel. It was 11 years ago when I uploaded my first experiment that I filmed at that time. And then made some short films and one feature film. And also got really interested in showcasing work. So in London, I organized, which I think some people say was the world's first screening of mobile feature films. And it was 3 works that were displayed in the Lumiere Cinema. And that was quite nice because Lumiere Cinema is also the place where, as the name indicates, where British cinema was born. And so, at that point, 117 years later, so we sort of showed a new format of filmmaking. And yeah, so when I moved to New Zealand, I was quite keen to continue working with some mobile phone, smartphone filmmaking. And I get in contact with a few colleagues in New Zealand. We set up MINA, which is called the Mobile Innovation Network Aotearoa, which means New Zealand. And so, as I now live in Melbourne, but before, MINA actually went to Melbourne. So we decided to call it now Mobile Innovation Network and Association so that the project can happen anywhere in the world.
Give a shout out to your co-founder.
Oh, my co-founder was Laurent. He was working at AUT University at that time. And I organized the first 2 editions of MINA in Wellington. And then he brought it to Auckland. And then we brought it to Melbourne with some colleagues at RMIT University. And then my colleague Dean brought it to Swinburne. And now I'm actually at Swinburne University in Melbourne. So, these sort of things happen sometimes.
Yeah, you've gone through a few names, but you always keep the Mobile Innovation Network. I also have to tell our listeners that, I don't know if you still have it, but the theme song for MINA with the QR code bouncing around to the beat is one of my favorite from any film festival I've ever encountered. So awesome.
Okay. Well, this was made by one of my students. And this year we actually went for a new theme song, which has all been produced on mobile devices, on tablets. And so this year at the screening, every year we have a screening, and I think for us it's also very important. When I say us, I always work collaboratively with different people. So there's a committee of around 12 people that look at the different films and make decisions about it, and then I sort of frame them into a 1-hour time slot. We had longer screenings in New Zealand before, but I think 1 hour seems to be the easiest way to engage audiences and get it out to people. And so after the screening, then we started to have some panels as well, so that people can actually meet the filmmakers. We have a bit of a discussion about what is happening with smartphone filmmaking and what are the trends and directions, what happened in the last years. And so this year we've also asked Martin, a colleague here from Melbourne, to come and join us. And he's a musician that makes music mainly with some mobile devices and tablets. And so that was like a natural fit because, us as filmmakers who make films with mobile phones and audio is, sometimes even 50% of the work. So we all know how important it is. We sort of are very interested to create some synergies with audio producers that do similar work on mobile devices. And after the screening, we then have a showcase or like a listening, like as of our pre-screening. Some of the music will be played.
That's pretty awesome. I also want to share with our listeners, we're doing the podcast right now, and you are in Australia and I'm in San Diego, but I met you. Max is we have a pretty good relationship. It's really been a long time. When we started our mobile film school, when we launched it, it was actually even before the film festival. We announced it at the first film festival that we had at the venue at Grossmont College there in 2012. And Max was one of the initial directors of the mobile film school. And so we did like a kickoff launch of the mobile film school, which ended up being a master class with Max. And he came out to San Diego for that. And then we also met you again. Well, we didn't meet you again. We saw you again in 2014 for that film festival here in San Diego. Are you coming back to San Diego for anything?
Yeah, it would be great. I mean, it's been always a fantastic experience to meet smartphone filmmakers around the world, and I think that's sort of some of the work that I'm very interested in to meet the people that make films, and of course, some of my work I've done in the past is also, yes, I'm a storyteller, but also I'm very interested in helping other people to tell stories. So I facilitate and run lots of workshops in digital storytelling, in smartphone filmmaking. And sort of the mobile phone film school was really sort of a similar thing where I could, help people to tell stories. So I'm very passionate about this, and I'm also an educator. So that sort of is something.
I want to talk about that. I want to talk about your passion for a second, because that's actually really important. Because when we first started this, you and myself and very few other film festivals around the world, focusing on mobile filmmaking, mainly with mobile phones, even though some of the festivals, including yours, you allow other mobile devices. But we, our passion, not to say that no one else is passionate, but we're, pioneers in this as one of the first few. And you and myself and some of the other ones, we've been doing this nonstop, annually, every single year. No matter what happens, we always manage to pull it off. And so, I just want to point that out to our listeners. We're actually just talking here to a great pioneer in the mobile film making industry, and it is driven by our passion, isn't it, Max?
Yes. So thanks, of course, for the frames. It's really nice. I think there's almost I'd like to call it different waves that we've been going through with mobile phone filmmaking and now with smartphone filmmaking. And I think there's always, as it's such a dynamic form for storytelling, there's always different opportunities that come up. And I think in the very beginning, it was sort of almost like, can we actually make a film with, a mobile phone that even had very short video recording capacity and that didn't have great audio capacity, and also the 3GP files, when you saved them, they when you blew them up on the big screen, they looked really quite different, which I thought was really quite amazing because it was a new visual language was created, and it made this look very unique. And so I think what we can see is that some of the people that have been passionate about this space, that have been creating smartphone films in different places. There was a great festival in France as well, the Pocket Film Festival.
Oh, Pocket, was it Pocket Cinema, maybe?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think they ran for 3 or 4 years, and one of my first feature film, Max is a Kaitai, was screened there, and it was fantastic in Les Halles, which is a big center in the middle of Paris. Had 800 people sold out cinemas watching mobile phone films, and lots of French filmmakers producing work. And I think that sort of, was very much, I guess, in French filmmaking, where the French New Wave, and you had more, I think, French-speaking films that have been actively supported. That happened, I think, quite early. And then, of course, there was another few other initiatives around Europe. But I think it's fantastic to see what happens now also that in the industry, finally, you've got Hollywood producers producing this, that there's a whole spectrum of various creative practices that emerge. And I think it's very much like, with filmmaking generally, people are very passionate about producing projects. And I think it's sort of that we now created, a very special format that, sort of now after almost 10 years or 11 years,
well,
also
you were talking about Max with a Kate, and that was, I've talked to filmmakers who started in 2008, but you created that. Was it in 2004 or 2006 when you started that?
I started filming that in, to remind myself, it was
in Japan, right? In 2006 is when you finished it.
It was a city film about Japanese cities. Yeah. And it took me quite some time to produce the work because I went to, I shot it on 4 months on location. That was in 2006. And I filmed around, I think, 180 hours of video material. So it took me almost 2 years to complete the editing. And it was then presented in 2008 or 2007 as a first premiere, as a film mobile screening. It was a quite experimental film, and I think it's sort of, it's still quite resonating when we talk about smartphone filmmaking, about personal filmmaking styles.
Well, yeah, but that's your forte, is the experimental filmmaking.
Yes, I think that's sort of, I see personally, I see that smartphone filmmaking or mobile phone filmmaking is sort of in the innovation space, about trying new things out, is what's making things possible. And so I think experimental documentary is really at the, it's one of these things where you can position it in. So sometimes these are aesthetic explorations. So, how does a film look? How does a film feel? But sometimes it's also about the process. How do you actually get this work made? And, sort of how do you, from technical challenges to like, conceptual challenge, with developing sort of, a new, like a slightly different way of making films. Because when you have got, if you compare a mobile phone to, like, I don't know, a DSLR camera, with a DSLR camera, you sort of course, would use the lens capacity, and you would, zoom into anything that is important. I think in smartphone filmmaking or mobile phone filmmaking, you don't have this. So you're always with the action. I think that's something that's very quite unique about mobile phone filmmaking. So thinking about some of these limitations that the phone has, but actually turning this around and making this a way more personal filmmaking style. But I think that is exactly what is happening now. If you look at the big films that have been at, 2 years ago or 3 years ago with Tangerine, or last year with, Unsane, they were also very personal smartphone films that used the smartphone in a very particular way. And I think that's something that we can see in the experimental work. And there have been other people that have done this, other filmmakers in more artistic ways or more sort of documentary traditions. Yeah, and so that, I think, creates now a new format for filmmaking.
Yeah, and they become that style. It's sort of like, the Super 8, remember, from, not that we were there or anything, but I mean, like Super 8 filmmaking back in the 60s and the 70s. Where it's very subjective too, because some people like it and some people don't, obviously, like art.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly the reference. So that's sort of the way that I got into at that time mobile phone filmmaking. Was I was made a short film where I filmed with a DV camera and the Super 8 camera, and I sort of also edited the film, the Super 8 material as an actual, developed the film, and then scratched it and edited it. And after I finished that project, that was like when I lived in London, when I saw that you could get like if you sign up for a mobile phone contract, you get a mobile camera phone. So I was like, oh wow, that's like a camera, so I should make a film with it. And I think if you think about Super 8, the references, I think it's quite similar. So it's, you get the sort of film grain that you have which are like the pixels. The Super 8 only had 3 minutes of recording, and if you remember back in the days, mobile phones had like these sort of small memory cards you would put in the side, and you could record 3 to 5 minute max of video. And so I think it's a very similar style. Audio quality wasn't also too good, like the same in Super 8. But there have been feature films that have been made on Super 8 cameras, right? So and I think that sort of was a similar spirit with mobile phone filmmaking. Is if you want to make a project, it's not about what kind of camera you have, but how you treat your idea and how you go out and develop it. And so for me as a young filmmaker, of course, it was sort of, why invest lots of money into a big camera when I can use the same money to make a project and go on location. And so, so there was I just checked that it was 2008 when it was presented.
When we're talking about, experimental filmmaking in the way that you do it, and one of the things that I'm always talking about is how important the story is. But when you're doing these experimental films that you do, how would you compare that to actual storytelling?
I mean, I think, first of all, with experimental filmmaking, it's a great idea to understand how does the whole process really work. And by experimenting, trying out different avenues, you can learn a whole lot about how we can actually produce a moving image project or a video or a film. And so storytelling has various traditions. The way that we know storytelling, as we approach it in the media, is normally based on sort of, some very literary structures. But you can also think about the visual qualities of film and video. So thinking about more as a, film project that lives in the art world. And so if you talk about color, rhythm, movement, you're opening up a whole new experience. And so these are things that you can develop to push not only the content, but also developing certain experiences for filmmaking. And I think smartphone filmmaking is one of these things that, if you can capture a great experience, people don't really mind about what some people say is not an appropriate quality. So, and this is something that, for instance, journalism has been done for a long time, right? When you see images of where people filmed on cell phones or smartphones or mobile phones, certain events, and then news broadcasters pick these up because there's no other camera around at that time. So the experience that is created, can make up for what some people would sort of not be happy about the image treatment. But I think the other thing is also very much giving reference to the process of filmmaking, right? So you always in traditional filmmaking, you hide the artifact on the pixel, but, if you let go a bit and engage that you're actually making a film and you sort of, showcase the process as part of the filmmaking, like I made with Max with the Kaitai, for instance, that opens up, a whole new story world that you can engage in.
That's true. A story through the process of experience, which is analyzing in a way, right? Analytical.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's sort of where really the editing comes in, right? So, and the editing can play a very important part in terms of, depending on what you have. I mean, of course, it depends on every project, but an experimental film, the editing that's where you can craft the story. That's where you get the different elements together and make them work. And so you've got, classical story structures that come from, more literary and narrative ideas, but you can also, be more in a free form and be more explorative with these sort of things. And sort of maybe getting some ideas from surrealist artists, constructivist artists, and you can then, create some really quite interesting projects. I think that's sort of what the work you also see at Mina is, where people sometimes, sort of, break a story to make these things happen.
Just to kind of throw this out there for people before we go on, I wanted to bring up that you have your 8th International Mobile Innovation Screening, right, which is happening on November 16th.
Yep.
And
in Melbourne.
In Melbourne, and is it taking place at Swinburne University?
Yep, it's at Swinburne University this year.
Cool.
We've got a fantastic cinema space. So, we were at ACME, the Australian Centre for Moving Image, last year, which was a great experience for us. And we're also running a symposium on the 15th of November, which is called Smart Storytelling Day.
Yeah.
So it's sort of easier for us to combine these two events in one location. And so, it's in Swinburne, it's in Hawthorne, not too far from the train station. So, yeah.
So you ran a workshop for, I read about this in the material that you sent me. You said you ran a workshop for cinematic VR and 360 video. What do you mean by cinematic VR and 360?
Yeah, so in the last 2 years, you had these omnidirectional video cameras that have been introduced that are like, I think, very similar in the space that smartphone filmmaking is. So some of these cameras you can attach to the smartphone, or some of these cameras connect to a smartphone, and they're sort of very much in the same, price bracket as the smartphone, sort of accessible 360 video cameras. And you can produce, also, like, of course, you've got 360 videos now on YouTube, on Vimeo, on Facebook. So there's a new way of experiencing and engaging with some cinematic forms. And so, of course, when we talk about VR, which sort of these 360 video productions are, there's like different forms of VR. But I think if we sort of say cinematic VR, it sort of very much speaks to video production. It speaks to the, expectations that people have. So of course, VR can also be interactive. It can be in a game. And you can make videos also, cinematic videos also interactive, of course, but it's not that we sort of showcase games, that we showcase interactive VR works, but they are cinematic experiences. Of course, we can't show them in the cinema, but we have we've got for everyone that comes to the screening, some Google Cardboards, and with a QR code, people can experience them at our after show event or take them home. And of course, as it's such a new environment, and Mina is all about engaging people, we created a workshop for this. So that people that are interested in people, makers, filmmakers, creators, to engage in this form of video production, storytelling. We ran a workshop, and it was great to see that we could teach this in 2 days.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And VR, for our listeners, that's obviously for us, but some may not know that we're talking about virtual reality. And there actually, you know what, Max? Maybe a few weeks ago, I read that there's an app that's available for some of the smartphones with dual cameras, so they don't have to attach a separate camera to their phone. Have you heard of that?
There's so many things happening in that space, which is fantastic. So of course, when we work with some virtual realities or cinematic VR, what we do in these workshops is we teach Adobe Premiere Pro, because that's a very easy way that we can edit cinematic VR content. And I'm quite happy to work with, I'm quite excited to work with the Vuze cameras, because they are also 360 3D. So that sort of, adds another immersive element into the 360 videos. And of course, if you're wearing a 360 headset and if you're experiencing the shot that's interior, the 3D element really kicks in. So I think there's some great projects that we've seen at the major film festivals. So whether it's Sundance or Tribeca or in Sheffield Documentary Film Festival, they have Melbourne International Film Festival, name it. All of these big festivals have now a strand for virtual reality, VR, cinematic VR.
Yeah, we had some friends that in San Diego that are really into doing this in 3D as well. And we had that. They did a VR lounge in 2016 for that film festival, and so and we had people, just sort of during the breaks and things like that. They were showing, they were viewing films and things like that were shot by them with those headsets. But you're right. It'd be cool to be able to show that and have that experience. And I think in the future that might actually happen, in a cinematic sense,
Yeah. And there's for instance, a great space here in Melbourne, which is the virtual reality cinema, where you can go and have a shared experience of 16 or 18 people wearing a headset at the same time.
Yeah.
So I think that is something, because for me, that's why also we do the Mina screening film festival. Is I think it's very much of part of this, having this interaction with the audience, so that there is the panel afterwards, where people talk about their projects. That means people that come to the screening, they can ask a question, but they can also meet the filmmakers afterwards. I think that is something that it's, I think, quite important for the sort of space of filmmaking, because we sort of reach out into areas that are about, community engagement, they're about creativity, they're about collaboration, and so having that element where we get people together, I think it's really important, but also fantastic and fun.
It's grown a lot since you and I first started doing this stuff, where, I mean, now some of the filmmakers, like last year, we had some filmmakers from Australia who had never met each other, but they met here in San Diego through our film festival. But it's really interesting how many people have become connected through this, and of course the internet and social media and everything. But they've come connected, and it's a great community.
Yeah, I think that's the whole idea. It's about creating a bit of a community around smartphone filmmaking, and that's why it's called Mobile Innovation Network and Association, because that's sort of what we want to do. Is we want to bring people together and share ideas about what is happening to smartphone filmmaking. And yeah, I think that that happens through some discussions, and lots of people have been engaged with me now over the last year. Some international colleagues, some people here from Melbourne, of course, people from New Zealand that I've been working with. And I think it's a very collegial space. Of course, it's also a very open space, and sort of we've introduced now a new voices category, because there's been some people now that, I don't know, name it, like Konrad Mess, Benoit Labret, Anders Weberg, people that have been making films for years and years, like myself, on smartphones and stuff, because you wouldn't want to have someone as a new filmmaker in a competition with someone that has now 8 or 10 years experience. So we created a new voices category. And I have to say, if I had to make a decision which category I like more, the international or the new voices, I couldn't tell you, because it's so interesting what emerging filmmakers make with some smartphone filmmaking. And so, I think that is also a space. It's an open space. It's a space for people that, want to make films again, or haven't made films for some time, or are completely new to filmmaking. So, and I think that's what I really enjoy about smartphone filmmaking, that it breaks down some of these barriers that you normally have. And I mean, it's also like about fantastic to see with the people that we're working with in terms of like our collaborators. So like whether it's Filmic Pro, LumaTouch, or Bscript, or now with Adobe and launching Adobe Rush. I think these are like fantastic tools that we all use, and that sort of help you to push smartphone filmmaking to the next level. And still, I think for me, it's all about anything you can fit in a pocket. That's why we also call it pocket camera sometimes. Is that sort of domain.
One of the unique and the most inspiring things that I love about what we're doing is that you go to a traditional film festival, and people sit down and they watch these films. These are people that are not filmmakers, right? They love the stories on the screen, the films, and they'll sit down and they'll watch the film and they're this is great, but this other element comes in our film festivals, because they're sitting down and they're watching these creations and these stories, and they have stories too. Everybody has stories, but they're holding the tool in their hand that, so it's very inspiring to see how excited they get and how inspired they get, because they're going, I could do that. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's also about, there's so much more creative elements that we can engage with now. So because you've got the phone for filmmaking, but you can also use it with LumaTouch or Adobe Rush or Adobe Premiere Clip for editing. So, you can produce music on the phone, and I think that sort of is a whole new environment that is enabling some slightly different works we might expect from when you work with a big camera, when you sort of bring everything to the editing studio. And there's nothing wrong with these projects, right? I think it's just about saying that there's a new space opening up. I think that's sort of very much the recognition that I think there's around more than a dozen film festivals around now in the world. And it's just really great to see. I always keep an eye out on what's happening in San Diego, of course, because it's one of these things you can't miss in a year. Then there's another great festival we had in Australia here, which is in the Sydney Opera House, the SF3 Festival, and There's a great festival.
There's a lot, but the other thing that I wanted to point out too in this film festival, when the audience is watching these things, they have the tool in their hand. That's where what we were talking about before, what you were mentioning about the community building part of it, because the filmmakers come, right, and they're involved in this Q&A, and now they're engaging with the attendees who have these tools, and they're sharing also with the attendees how they made this happen, which is really it really is awesome, Max. And then on top of that, these filmmakers, they all get together, and you were mentioning some of these editing programs, and even with different phones, what can you do with a Samsung or a Pixel or the iPhone 7 versus the iPhone, the XS, or any of those, and they're networking with each other, not just because they may work together or help each other collaborate, but they're also learning new ways and different ways in how to do things in this space.
It's about inspiring, your colleagues, and taking some of their inspiration as well. And it's also great. Like, for instance, some of the people that we've been with Mina this year working with is Adrian, who's a fantastic documentary smartphone filmmaker. He just does some really great cinematography. He's got these moments within his film, and you can see that he comes from a graphic design background. So they're they constructed really great, and of course on the big screen that looks even more fantastic. And he works very well with some of these sort of small lenses that you can use. But still, I think that's they're all things that they come at a very accessible price point, and you just use a B script that fits in your backpack. So it's still I think all pocket filmmaking, smartphone filmmaking. Or Krish, who has been editing our show reel, and again it's just last year was fantastic way he edited the show reel together. This year again, I think that's I think what just for me also is just fun about Mina is about working with people that are really are so passionate about the space, and are excited about seeing the works. And of course we've got every year long discussions also with our judges about which work we choose and which not, and I think this is all part of setting up this. We work on this festival or this screening for almost a year, and of course more intensively at some points, less intensively at other points, but it's about working with great people that see that make things happen.
Yeah, that's one of the things that the BTS, right? The behind the scenes, because you curate the films and the festival, and I pretty much have both my hands into ours as well. But we do work on it throughout the year, and there's so much interaction with not just the judges and the sponsors, and with just people in general, letting everybody know about our spaces, but also, quite honestly, the filmmakers, as they're engaging with us, first they'll contact us, about the film festival, if maybe they should or should not submit a film. Then they do. Then we go through that process, and then, when they do want to attend the film festival, the whole experience, is really, really involved, and we learn a lot from each other by going through it.
Yeah, and I think it's also now that smartphone filmmaking really has some opportunities to engage, people beyond the sort of festival experience or the screening experience. I think that's something that I find really, really exciting. So I've been doing some work in the last 2 to 4 years, I would say, where I work a lot with communities to help facilitate filmmaking processes and set up workshops.
Yeah.
And so I've just been commissioned by some colleagues in New Zealand to run a short documentary series for young people to tackle things like obesity. And we've made some sort of other projects before. So when I say we, I work with organizations and community groups in New Zealand, but here also in Australia, where we've worked with senior citizens. And so it's just fantastic to see that you can use storytelling really to, support great projects. And I think that's something that is, something that I hope to see more and more, that people realize what you can really do when you engage people in storytelling.
Well, yeah, because you can engage the community directly. There's a lot of organizations out there that hire. I used to work for some of them. They'll hire the production team to share the stories of the community, but we now have the ability for the community members themselves to share their own stories.
Yep. And I think that's, of course, which thing you get a screening from a festival, you can get some inspiration from that, and you can take it back to your own community and realize some of these projects. I think that's something that I find really, really great to see what we can do to put it onto the big screen.
Right. So share with us a little more about what's involved in your with our listeners. So because that we have a lot of listeners that are out in your way there in Australia. There's a lot of countries that are listening to this, but I do want you to share more about your event that's coming up, because that's November 15th and 16th.
Yeah, on November 15th is a Smart Storytelling Day, which is it's a mini conference, a symposium for creatives, makers, and some academics to get together and talk about what's happening in this whole new world of what you just mentioned, VR, virtual reality, AR, augmented reality. And you get a couple of presentations where people show their films and talk a bit more about their films as well. And then on the 16th of November is a screening. If you're interested, there's some more information on Mina.pro. So that's Mina is it's not the Italian rock singer. No, it's the Mobile Innovation Network and Association. And there'll be more links, of course, in the description, that sort of stuff. But it's just mina.pro. We've got a screening program online now. We're still doing a little bit of fine tweaking here and there to get it perfect for the screening. But we've selected quite a few films internationally. We've got 14 smartphone and pocket films in the international competition, 8 in the New Voices competition, and then for the first time the cinematic VR showcase and the mobile music in the après screening as well. So it should be a great event. We've invited some of the filmmakers from Melbourne, Australia, and Sydney to come to join us on the panel, which is always a great way. So we have some of the people that are some of the filmmakers that have that are in the screening. So Nicholas Hansen, he made the film Seymour. There is, of course, as well She Rose, Malvina Wojcicka. She just won the SF3 in Sydney, and I think she also won a festival in Barcelona. So it's great to have her. There's Patrick Kelly with What's the Nails. He'll be on the panel as well. There's Angela Brake from the SF3 festival, who's also a filmmaker. She's having her film The Circle Game in the program. And we've got 2 emerging filmmakers on the panel as well, just sort of, get some of the new voices on the stage, really. And it's Cleo Salmino, and we have Rachel Chen presenting, talking to, I will be moderating the session, and we'll be discussing what happens with smartphone filmmaking. We'll also be joined by some people that have been working in the space of the workshops a bit more. So that is Hilary Davis. She's here from Swinburne, from the Social Innovation Research Center, and she is a person that sort of comes more from a background. She's an academic scholar that comes more from a social science background, but she works a lot with communities, especially in rural Victoria, and she will talk about some of the projects that we've been making recently. There's Martin, hope I pronounce his name now right, Poslocker, who makes the mobile music, and there's Mikey from the VR cinema. And we also have this year Hoopy, which is Eamon Weiss and Ajax McKirrell. Hoopy is sort of a social media filmmaking crossover initiative where you create some short video loops. And
oh yeah, I know who they are. I think we're following each other on Instagram.
Great, yeah. So that would be they're like a Melbourne-based startup. So I think that's something that I find also very interesting, that we sort of, have the whole ecology around smartphone filmmaking. So there's of course all our sponsors that have been doing some great work with us over the last years. But it's also great to get Hoopy as a startup here in Melbourne to talk about their work. We had a fantastic panel last year, so I think they'll be I'm looking forward to this already. I think I'll just moderate it and ask a couple of engaging questions, but of course it's open to the audience as well to engage with us. And then in our program, we've got the bios from everyone listed as well. So that gives a bit of a heads up for everyone. And then afterwards, we have a mini meetup so that we can people get to meet us as well.
Right. That's important because that's part of the social networking part. Max, I'm not going to let you go just yet. I want to do something with you, but I don't want to forget to bring up the fact that you've got a film submitted, and hopefully it'll get selected to the film festival this year here in San Diego. You share a little bit about that film?
Oh yes. So it was really like a, how to say, I was quite fascinated. It was good. Luckily, I was good to travel a bit lately, and I found this notion of a jet lag really, really fascinating somehow. And before I traveled, I read in one of these web blogs that if you have a jet lag, more or less you can't do anything about it, but just do something that you really enjoy. So, and that's what I did. I sort of edited with Adobe Spark, a short video, which, yeah, it's a bit jet laggy, So, and it was really driven by an experience of traveling, because I took some of these sort of classical shots, which are like amazing when you travel, and the notion of different countries, different cities just rushing past you when you are like on a car, on a train, or on a plane, and so I just took some of my favorite travel memories. And then when I was jet lagged, to sort of, I was up like at 2 a.m. in the morning and no chance to sleep. So I just said, okay, I can edit this now, and that's what I did. And then I just uploaded that to the internet. So yeah, it's really driven by that experience at that time and the colors that I try to bring together. There is some sort of new media artist, critic, philosopher, Mark America, who did some writing about that jet lag actually is internet time, and that's sort of something that I try to create with this as well, because the internet is sort of always online everywhere in the world, and
True.
That's something that happens when you are like traveling. You sort of replace some of these sort of sometimes you jump time zones, and you sort of you lose a day or you gain a day when you fly, which is like quite bizarre things that happen, and so yeah, that's sort of just a little really playful experiment around.
That's a really interesting. Actually, I could talk about that for a long time because I grew up, traveling between Spain and here all the time. But, that's true because right now, here in San Diego, we're talking, right? And it's in the evening of Sunday, and over there it's Monday. So you're in the future.
That sounds great. Yes, and so of course, if you look at the film and think some of these things are a little bit weird, it's meant to be a little bit weird. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think it's one of these things that you can do with a smartphone is the idea of experimenting, right? You have an idea, so you take the phone out of the pocket and film it, and also edit it.
All right, let's play a game, Max. You want to play this game?
Okay, yeah, totally. Let's go.
Total surprise. All right, so it's a timed game, and I got the timer. Guess what I'm using for my timer, Max? Using
your smartphone.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you 20 seconds, and I know I haven't even told you what we're doing here, but I'm going to put you on the spot here. It's called the shout out game, but what I want you to shout out right now instead of people is, especially because you're an experimental filmmaker, I just want you to shout out the most movies that you've actually watched in your entire life that you love the most, and name all of them in 20 seconds. Are you ready?
Well, I think, yeah, I mean...
Hold on. Okay. I'm going to do it. I know, I totally put you on the spot, and it's like, where's that going to come from? But that's part of the challenge. So,
that's fine.
All right, get set and go.
So, if anyone knows me, of course, I'll start with Gigahertz of the Man with the Movie Camera, but that is followed just right behind Hans Richter's Ghost Before Breakfast, Walter Ritman's Berlin Symphony of a City. Very still in love with a surrealist, whether they cover a country.
Time's up, sir.
Wow. Well, I'm not finished yet.
I know, but it takes time. What was the first one that you said?
I was talking about films that were produced in the 1920s.
Yeah.
So that is like something that I found really interesting for mobile phone filmmaking, to look at these sort of early films, because these filmmakers made films when there wasn't the film language established, right? So it's like documentary was defined in 1927 by Grierson as a creative treatment of actuality, but people have been making films, years before that, or like 10 years or 7 years before that. And I think that's something that we see in smartphone filmmaking. But of course, in the smartphone filmmaking scene, I think some of the films that I really enjoy seeing are the films by my pioneers. So whether that's like Benoit Laudret in France, Anders Weberg in Sweden, of course, more recently, the documentaries from Adrian Jeffs. And so I think that is really the films that I should have mentioned at the first challenge.
What was that one that was, I think it someone in South Korea or North Korea that made, I think it was South Korea that made one in 2004 or something like that?
By one of my films, you mean? Or...
No, one of the pioneers, one of the first films.
There was a film by a South Korean filmmaker called Night Fishing. That was fantastic because it screened at the Berlinale in Berlin. So, which of course is, that sort of was, I think, is a very important film for making it at a festival like this. I mean, Berlinale is like Cannes, right? It's sort of the, avant-garde, contemporary, independent filmmaking. And that was great to see. Yeah, it's a great film.
I watched that and it was a bit creepy.
That's, if you look at SF3 was full of horror films, which I found very interesting. Anyone comes to the Mina screening, that's one of the questions that I'll definitely ask Angela. The festival in Barcelona had lots of, in Spain, there seemed to be lots of horror films and lots of creepy smartphone films being produced for quite some time. There's a filmmaker who made the film about The Lift.
Alfonso Garcia.
Yes, and he sort of makes these sort of, what do we call them?
Thrillers, but horror. I mean, it was...
it's kind of like horror, but it's in a slightly different format.
Like a first-person format, in a way.
Yeah, and so that's sort of, I find it really interesting to see that these sort of different trends are happening now with smartphone filmmaking, where people sort of do different projects. And then of course, in San Diego, you've got the red carpet in your pocket, which is sort of a bit more the celebration of the narrative filmmaking. And there's so many to name in 20 seconds that is almost not possible. I think I would have to go. I could keep talking about this, but I think that's also, if anyone is interested, really, is what we've done is on the Mina website. We've listed all the last 8 years of screening programs and the trailers. So if you go to www.mina.pro/screenings, you can see the program from the last 8 years. And so, if I don't know how fast you can read in 20 seconds, but there's some gold in there, definitely.
Well, the contest was over, the little challenge, the game. I mean, it wasn't a contest. That game was over when the alarm sounded, but I just wanted you to elaborate a little more even after, because it was, you brought up some very interesting films, And then the last thing that I would like for you to just share with people is, where can they follow Max?
I'm on Twitter, so it's just Max Mobile, at Max Mobile. We've got the Facebook page for Mina, which is Facebook.com/Mobile Innovation Network. So you can like us there. Just reach out with a good old email, which is max max@mina.pro. Yeah, I think that's sort of the space that I mainly use for online. Yeah, I'm also on LinkedIn. If you find my German surname, that is Schleser. Good luck. It's a Schleser. Yeah. But if you Google Max mobile phone filmmaking, smartphone filmmaking, something might come up.
Well,
Maybe even one of these
if they're
articles
gonna
that I've
Google,
written.
if they're gonna Google it, they might as well just go to the show notes, or because we're gonna include the links for you there as well.
Okay. Yep. I will of course list some more links to some of these articles and some more of the where you can find me on social media.
Yeah.
No problem. Yeah.
Because
And I'm always interested in talking to people. So yeah. Yeah. And so many other films I should have mentioned, like of course there's Conrad Mess who made these amazing films.
Well, he's got a whole list, though. I mean, if you just go to his website, you can see all his films, of course. And when I had, for listeners, we were talking about how Max was one of the directors of the Mobile Film School, and Conrad Mess was the other director at the time as well. And the reason why I chose both Max and Conrad was not just because they were pioneers, but because they brought both sides of the coin, really, because Max was very experimental and Conrad Mess is more of the cinematic style filmmaker, trying to make Hollywood films with his phone.
I'd say like he's the Tarantino reinvented,
right?
reloaded.
Reloaded. Love it. I think you'll like that too. Well, great. Hey, I don't want to keep you. I know you're busy. But is there anything else that you can think of that you want to say within the next few minutes here?
Yeah, well, I'm making some new work, but that will be out sometime soon. If you follow my social media, I keep talking about that. And yeah, it's great talking with you again, Susie. Sort of, it's always great to catch up with people to see what's happening in the world of smartphone filmmaking. I think it's just at the moment really exciting times that there are so many more opportunities and so much more, resonance for smartphone filmmaking. So whether that's in the big Hollywood industry with we've seen some successes and it's sort of very traditional like blockbuster formats. Some great work at independent film festivals, some great work happening in the context of gallery museum spaces. I've just seen some great installations that use smartphone film festivals, use smartphone filmmaking, and then of course the old smartphone film festivals that I wanted to say internationally all around the world that really sort of like showcase and celebrate what's happening. I think it's really great to see. So I'm looking forward to see more editions in San Diego as well, and let's just stay in touch. And
well, yeah, I hope we see you in San Diego soon enough. You're like family to us here. So, and there's some newcomers, some new people involved with our film festival that I talk about you all the time. Well, Max this, Max that, and they're like, when are we going to meet Max? So, we'll have to see you soon. All right, listeners, thank you for listening, and we'll say goodbye now. Say bye, Max.
Bye-bye. Make some films.